Tibetan Buddhism, or generally in religion, prominent and female teachers are very rarely written about. If you look at the vast quantity of Tibetan biographies, Namdals, it's one of the largest corpus of Tibetan literature, it's Namdal biography, but we have really very few of Tibetan women religious speakers. It's mostly always about men. And like Professor Benard and others have been really pioneering, not only within the Western scholarship, but within the Tibetan community to highlight these incredible women spiritual teachers from Tibet. And tonight we will hear great of Sakya Jetsunmas. And in some ways, in our poster, I mentioned that Sakya Jetsunmas, one of the most eminent Buddhists we can talk about, who lives in Richmond and was in Vancouver before. And thank you very much for Professor Benard for coming to, not so far from Tacoma, but coming to Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Professor Sakya. Thank you. And I thank Professor Sakya for inviting me. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And I also thank the steering committee of the University of British Columbia Himalaya Program, the Institute of Asian Research, the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs, and the Department of Asian Studies. And most of all, I thank you for all coming, showing your interest and curiosity about the talk tonight. So we'll get started. This is the book that I recently published about a few years ago now. It's about quite a few different, I'll explain who the Sakya Jetsunmas are, but they're all daughters in this one particular family, the Sakya Khon family. And in the book, there's about 4 major biographies and then quite a few minor biographies about other women in the Sakya family. But tonight, as Professor Sakya said, I will concentrate just on Jetsun, who is an eminent Lama. I think quite a few of you know her. She lives in Richmond. Soon it will be her 85th birthday. So long life to Jetsun. So let me get started. So everybody always likes to know, oh, what is your inspiration? How did things start? Well, I saw this photo once in a Sakya biography, and I said, who's this woman? She looks very regal to me. She looks very interesting to me. Well, I found out this is the aunt, the maternal aunt of Jetsun and Sakya Trinzen. And so initially, I was just going to write her biography. But then as I started to find out more about the whole Khon family, I started to discover there were all these eminent daughters, and their title is Jetsunma. And so, but it all started from this one photo of Damo is just a title. It means lady, like in the British tradition, lord and lady. So Damo, Trinley, Paltar Sanmo, and she's the maternal aunt of Jetsun and Sakya Trinzen. And for those of you who might not know, this is Tibet. It's kind of reduced, and then towards the bottom, towards the south, is Sakya. And Sakya, this is a little bit more of a close-up. You can see Sakya down in the left-hand corner. And Sakya actually means just a pale earth. Like Sa means earth, Kya means pale. And just like Lhasa, you might know the word Lhasa, Sa, and Lhasa is the gods, Sa is the place or the earth. So Sakya means pale earth. And it has a lot of dimensions. It's a town, it's a principality, and it's a Buddhist school that was established by the Khon family in the 1200s. One of the most famous buildings in Sakya is this Lakhon Chamo that was established in the 13th century. It's massive. It's just a massive place. It was established by, I don't know how many of you know these things, but Chögyal Papa, he was a very, very important Sakya Lama, and he became the religious preceptor of the Mongolian Khan, Kublai Khan, when he was Emperor of China, and this is in the 13th century. And so through this relationship, Chögyal Papa was able to amass enough funds to make this beautiful temple, the Khon. And it can hold like over 7,000 monks in its main area, and it's considered the largest temple in Tibet in terms of being able to hold so many monks in one place. And it also has this massive library, many old Sanskrit texts. Many Indian scholars came to Sakya, like in 1800s, 1900s, to look at the Sanskrit manuscripts. And very large statues. It's a massive place. It has 156 pillars. Like anybody who goes in there is just like awed by its dimension and what is in the Khon. And during the Cultural Revolution, most temples and places were destroyed in Tibet. But since there was this connection to Kublai Khan, who was a Chinese emperor, Khon was never destroyed. And so this is maybe the most famous structure in Sakya. And that was on the southern bank of a very small river. And so on the northern bank is the northern monastery. And there's constant rebuilding of these monasteries after the 1980s again. And so this was in 2006. And this is more the traditional style of the Sakyas, where you see the gray background and then you see the white, the red, and the blue. And those stand for the three bodhisattvas, the white for the bodhisattva of compassion, the red for bodhisattva of wisdom, Manjushri, and then the blue, the bodhisattva of power, Vajrapani. There's other ways to interpret it, but this is one of the major ways to interpret these three. And many different, like Guru Rinpoche, Atisha came and they prophesied that this would be a very major place, Sakya, and there would be emanations of these three bodhisattvas. And so the Sakyas really identify with these three bodhisattvas, and many of the family members of the Khon family are recognized as emanations of one or two or more of these bodhisattvas. And then another way of building is more this kind of red with the golden roofs. And so there were both styles in Sakya, and now I just wanted to show you what's going on in Sakya. Yes. And the family split up in the 1800s, and they became two families. One lives in Rajpur, India, the Doma Palace family, and the other family is the Punsel family, who lives in Seattle, Washington. And you can see there's, in the Doma Palace family, in the left-hand corner is Jetsunmas, because she's from the Doma Palace family. And this family is much bigger now. The two sons have quite a few kids. This is kind of an older photograph, but it's Jetsunmas and Sekusha that you might recognize. Then there is the older son, Ratnavajra, and his wife behind. Then Sakya Trinzen, who now has a new title of Sakya Trinchen with his wife. And then Gyanavajra, the younger son, with his wife. And then one of the young Jetsunmas, who now is 16 years old. So this is an older picture. And then in the Seattle, they didn't have any daughters, but he had quite a few sons, and some of the sons got married, and they have now the grandsons. So the two that are seated below Dr. Rinpoche, who's in the very middle, who passed away a few years ago, are the two grandsons. They're being trained in India. And this is Avikirti Vajra and Abhaya Rinpoche. And his wife, Dhammo Rinpoche, Dhammo Kusho is over here. Okay. So the Doma Palace in Sakya looked like this. There's not many photos that are available. This is the one, if you see any, it's usually this. It has 3 floors, and the 3rd floor was reserved only for the family. And so that's where most of the family lived. Jetsunmas had her own room, and it was on the 2nd floor. And there was an aunt's room that was also on the 2nd floor, and on the 2nd floor there was the kitchen. And then the bottom was where most of the servants lived, where there was different workshops, In the courtyards, there was another section where the horses and the saddles and everything were kept. And then there were quite a few shrines in the Doma Palace. So this is, and they had a small vegetable garden. Sakya is so freezing cold. It's at the same latitude of like Cairo, Egypt, or Jacksonville, Florida, but it is so cold that even, nothing grows there. And they only have very, very limited growth. They have barley, and they say that in the winter, when they would do the water bowl offerings, it would just freeze. It was that cold in Sakya. So, and I visited it a few times in the summer. It was really cold even in the summer, so I can't imagine what it was in the winter. And so what is the meaning of Jetsuma? So it's a Sanskrit translation of Bhattarakaka. I'm probably butchering this, excuse me. It means like venerable woman, woman worthy of worship, accomplished female master, heroine. It has all these meanings. But in different Tibetan families, there's only two spiritual families, the Khon family and the Mindroling family, that Jetsuma is given at birth. When a daughter is born in these two spiritual families, she gets the title immediately at birth. Later, some other women, when they really prove themselves as great practitioners, they're given the title either by a Lama or by the community. But these are the only two families that I'm aware of that they received this title at birth. And so this is Jetsun Kusho, a little bit younger days, and this is Mindroling Jetsuma Khandra Sirin Paljo Rinpoche. And Mindroling is a younger spiritual family than the Sakyas, because the Sakyas really started in the 12th century, and Mindroling, I think, is 16th century. So it has, now it's existing for almost a millennium. It's quite phenomenal that the Khon family has existed and persists to develop spiritual leaders for over a millennium. And so now the Sakya Jetsunmas, the supports and opportunities that they receive. So chukuls are like recognized reincarnations, and so recognized reincarnations, usually all their property and their major possessions are kept from one life to the next. But it's very rare that a woman receives the same recognition, but all the Jetsumas have a particular labran, these are the residences, and they have all the physical supports to maintain the labran from one generation to another. If there's more, there's 5 labrans in both families, and if there's more than 5 daughters, 2 will share a labran. And so this is very much like the tukul. They don't call the Jetsumas tukuls, but they have some of the same privileges that the tukuls have. And then in this family, they're given equal opportunity to practice as the sons are given. And Jetsun Kusho always likes to say, whatever Sakya Trinzen's teachings he received in Tibet, I received the same ones. And so there was really no discrimination or no separation between the sons and the daughters. If they were interested and they were capable, they had equal opportunity. And even though they had the same privileges as the sons, they didn't have the same obligations, because in the Sakya tradition, one of the sons, we don't know which son, it's not always clear, will become the head of the Sakyas, or the Sakya Trinzen. And so they have more responsibilities. They have to make sure they do certain things so that if they're selected as the Sakya Trinzen, they are prepared. Whereas the Jetsumas don't have these responsibilities. So they can train, they can practice equally to all their brothers, but they are freer in this way. And in Tibet, they were definitely encouraged to be nuns. It was a bit of a scandal that they got married, but Jetsun Kusho said there weren't many that got married, very few. Now, as you know, Jetsun Kusho married, but I'll explain the situation. So now I'm going to show a little bit of her family. So the man in the middle, I know this is a very distorted slide, I'm very sorry, but the man in the middle is her grandfather, her paternal grandfather, Drachel Trinley Rinpoche. And he also had a sister, Pema Trinley, and she was a great yogini. Like, she's one of the people that I talk about in the book, but today I won't talk about her, but that was his sister. And so this is kind of his court, and then you see this one son on the side with the hat like that. That was one of his sons. And this is Jetsun Kusho and Sakya Jetsunmas' father. And this was probably taken in the late 40s. Vajradhara Nalang Kunga Rinchen Jetsun Kusho's father. Okay, so now I'll start from the bottom, which is Jetsun Kusho's mother is the younger sister of the Dhammo, that woman that I showed you before, the maternal aunt, because she was there were two brothers, and first they married one woman, and while she was giving birth, she died. This is from the Lading family. So then they had to remarry because they needed an heir. And so then they found this Dhammo Trinley Padra Sangmo from the Perncho family. And she was an excellent administrator, she was an excellent practitioner, she had many, many, many good qualities, but she did not conceive. So this was a very, very big problem for the Khon family, and they said, what should we do? And so then the grandmother suggested, well, you know, first of all, Perncho is a very, he was a Khon, the head of the cabinet, and very, very powerful man. So the family did not want to upset the Pernchos by sending back this daughter, since she couldn't conceive. And so the grandmother said, she has a younger sister. Why don't you bring the younger sister? Then, you know, they'll get along very well and we won't have any trouble. But all marriages in the Khon family at that time were secret. Like, when a bride was brought to the family, she had no idea she was getting married into the family. She was just brought in there. It was already all decided by the two families, but the bride herself had no idea she was getting married. And this was done not to create any obstacles, and also not to be ostentatious, because basically it was a spiritual combination rather than just a secular combination. And so it was very, very low key and very private. So after 11 years, since she never conceived, the aunt said to her younger sister, Sonam Dokar, why don't you come help me in Sakya, you know? So Sonam said, oh, okay, my older sister's asking me to come help me. I'll just go to Sakya. But then she's told she's going to marry the Khon brothers. And then she was very surprised, and no, why should I marry? And Anne said, I'm going to become a nun, and now you become the wife. And the sister said, no. If you become a nun and you leave me, I'll leave. I'm not staying here. So then they both stayed together, and they shared the responsibilities. And primarily, the mother, Sonam Dokar, was there to produce an heir. And so that's how the two sisters ended up marrying two brothers. And but unfortunately, you know, Sonam Dokar, she had a very short life, really. It's very sad. And so here, Dhammo Trinley Padra, she's dressed up in the song outfit, a very, very elaborate outfit. And I don't know exactly when this photograph was taken, but I'm assuming this photograph was taken for Sakya Jetsunmas' enthronement in 1959. And the inset is her brother when he lives in Dharamsala. But I'll show you her brother when he was in Tibet, the General Tashipalra. And he married into another family, so he changed his family name. And so when the Dalai Lama left in 1959, he protected the Dalai Lama, and then he served in the government in exile in Dharamsala until he passed away. So the only two from this family that were able to come to India was this Chashitara and Damo, the maternal aunt. And they stayed close until her dying day. He would always come from Dharamsala to Rajpur, especially for Losar and everything. So the first child that is born to Sonam Dokar is Jesuma, Chimi Osel Bukrit Rinzin Trilling. And she's born on a very auspicious day, Lapap Dupchen, which is coming in the beginning of November. And this is when the Buddha went up to teach Abhidharma to the 33rd heaven. This is where his mother is supposed to be reborn after she died. And he was descending after the teaching. And so she was born on this day. So this was not lost on the Tibetans. They said, this little girl is going to become a teacher. To be born on such an auspicious day like this is a foreshadowing that she will be a great teacher in the future. And so, and when I started interviewing Jetsun Kusha, I said, well, what's your first memory? And she goes, my first memory is this pilgrimage. And I said, oh, why did you take the pilgrimage? Well, what happened was, Sonam Dokar first gave birth to Jetsun Kusha in 1938, then she gave birth to a son in 1940. So the family rejoiced, oh, the son, finally we have a Sakya Trinset. But he died in 1943 or 44 from measles. And then at the same year, the uncle died. And so now the family is devastated. They lost their son, they lost the second husband, the uncle, and so they decided we must go on a big pilgrimage, we must generate a lot of merit, we must do a lot of prayers at all these holy sites, and for both the deceased son and the deceased uncle, plus merit to generate another son. And so this pilgrimage started in Sakya, went to Mount Kailash, was the first place that they stopped at. Then they went down to Mustan, and then they started going around the Nepalese valley, like Namo Buddha and Bodha, and they ended up in Parping. And then, so it was on for a long time. And there was another young girl that was just born in 1944. So she was only like around 2 months old when she started traveling, can you imagine all this? And they had nannies and they went on horse, and the nannies would hold this, Jetsun Kusha, she's only 6, the other little girl is only, 2 months old. Then there's the aunt and the mother and the father, and plus, of course, monks and servants. And so, so Jetsun Kusha remembers this very well. She went to Muktanath, and there were, I've never been to Muktanath myself, but there's these special caves that have like fiery water, and she remembered, yes, I see someone shaking her head. Yes, so she was saying this was so spectacular, she never saw such a thing in her life, and she remembers that, and then she remembers, we did, of course, so many prayers and rituals, but I was young, I was playing mostly with my sister, and so this was her first memory. And then they did a divination, should she continue on to India or should they go back to Tibet? So it's already in March, so it's getting a little bit warm in India, and so the family decided to go back to Tibet, but they didn't go back to Sakya. They went back first to another of their family homes, Sedong, and then from Sedong, they went up north to Nalanda, the Temple in Nalanda, where there's this great Lama there, Chogi Trinchen Rinpoche, probably some of you have heard. He's one of the main Lamas, but there was also Naklo Rinpoche there at the time. And Naklo Rinpoche was famous for, if he did rituals, they were efficacious, they were guaranteed, and so Naklo Rinpoche was asked to help the family have a baby boy. And so Naklo Rinpoche, he wanted to continue with his teachings, and he was giving the young Trinchen Rinpoche, Chogi Trinchen Rinpoche some teachings. And he was a little conflicted, but he said, no, this is much more important. The Sakya family needs an heir. So he traveled with the family. They went back to Sejong, and sure enough, Sakya Trinzen is born in September of 1945. So finally, they have their son. And so Jetsun Kusho and Sakya Trinzen really are very, very strong brother and sister relationship. A lot of times they spend Losar together. I know when Sakya Trinzen comes to North America, they always make it a point to meet. So, and part of the reason I think they're so close is that you'll see there's so much tragedy in their life, so much tragedy. So one of the first things that they did was they went to Lhasa, and in Lhasa, the Dalai Lama, who's quite young at the time, is giving the first initiation of the Bodhisattva compassion, Chenrezig. Not in this particular part of Norberlinka, but it's in Norberlinka itself. And so the chukuls are given special, places like on the stage, and so, and Jetsun Kusho, she liked to be a tomboy. She liked people to think she was a monk, and not a daughter. So she saw her play card, Sakya Jungse, the son. She didn't say anything. She took her seat and she sat down and everything. And then Sakya Trinzen, he was asked in different empowerments, you have to throw the flower. And so certain people are asked to come to the front of the room to throw the flower to, this predicts certain things. And so he's ready to throw the flower, but the Dalai Lama has this massive, these huge old microphones that people used to have massive, and he looks at the microphone, he almost forgets to throw the flower because he's so like, I never saw such a thing in my life. This is all new to them. And so then of course he throws the flower. And then, so they have very fond memories of this first initiation that they received from the Dalai Lama when they went to Lhasa in 1951. And then, I forgot to mention, the father had died in 1950. So now the maternal aunt must take care of everything for them. And so she has to find all the teachers, and I won't, list the teachers and the different teachings that they received. But she worked very, very hard that she would get the best teachers, and that they would be very well trained in what they're supposed to do. So these are some of Jetsun Kusho's early achievements. In 1948, at 10 years old, she undergoes a 1-month retreat on Buddhadharma Vajrapani. And this particular deity gets rid of a lot of obstacles. So in the Sakya Khon family, almost all the children of the Sakya Khon family always start with this particular retreat. But can you imagine at 10 years old to be able to, and these retreats are rigorous. I mean, you start 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you don't finish till 10, 11 at night. And you stay in your room and you don't see anybody. In this case, her tutor stayed with her to guide her properly and also to make sure that her mind did not wander. And so she did that. And then in 1949, she's now 11 years old. The Lakan Chemo, which I showed you before, that massive building, was struck by lightning in 1945. And so they had to repair it. It involved 2 stories that were damaged, and some of it was part of the library and everything. So at the time, the Punsok Palace is the Sakya Trinzen. So they were in charge of raising most of the funds. But the Punsok Palace, Sakya Trinzen asked the Doma Palace, we need some help, we still don't have enough money to do what we, to repair. And they also received money from the Tibetan government in Lhasa. And so the father says, okay, to Jetsun Kusho, you go and collect donations. And so she goes for 6 months at 11 years old to the nomads, like up in the northern plateau. She gives initiations, primarily an initiation of long life, a very famous Sakya one, which is Hayagripa and Amitayus. And then she gives Poa, and she does other things, and she collects money, and she collects over 1,000 dotse. How much is a dotse? Did we figure that out?
You got 1 yak.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that or not. Because everybody always has asked me. But anyway, she collected over 1,000 dotse. And she said she was very proud of herself because nothing was spent. I brought everything home. Of course, you had to give something to some of the servants who accompanied. That was obligatory, but the rest was all given towards the rebuilding of the Lakan Chemo. And so, at 11 years old, it's quite extraordinary that she can do this. And then during this same trip, when she was up in the northern plateau, she said one night, she was ready to go to sleep. These Sera monks knocked on her door, and they said it was very urgent. They had to come and talk to her and everything. She thought, okay, it must be something important because it's really so late. And so the Sera monks, they wanted to know about their abbot, the head of Sera Monastery. And at the time, there's this big controversy going on in Lhasa because the former regent, Redding Rinpoche, he went into retreat, and then he came out of it, and he expected to regent again, and he was not given the regency again, and another person received the regency, and supposedly, we don't know to this day, but supposedly they said Redding Rinpoche tried to poison the new regent, and eventually Redding Rinpoche was arrested, and he died mysteriously. He definitely died mysteriously. So this abbot sided with Redding Rinpoche, and so the monks were so worried that he would be imprisoned and maybe he would also die. And indeed he was imprisoned, but Jetsun Kusho said, if you do all these pujas for so many times, he will be fine. And so then in 1951, when they went to Lhasa, some of these Sera monks came back to her, and they said, thank you. And she had already forgotten what this thank you was. It just happened that the abbot was released when the Dalai Lama became the political leader, and he gave amnesty to all the prisoners. And so here's her divination, and throughout her life, people have always asked about divinations, and supposedly she's very accurate with divinations. And then she had some cousins in Sikkim who taught her how to do photography. So they gave her a camera, they gave her the chemicals, and she made a lot of photos, mostly of a lot of monks, but she would just give them away and everything. And supposedly she has some negatives that she brought here, but I have yet to see them. I'm still trying to see those negatives. But she learned photography, and then all the Sakya Lamas must undergo this retreat of Hivadra. And so in 1953, they underwent a 7-month retreat of Hivadra with her brother Sakya Trinzen. And once you undergo this retreat, then you can teach one of the most important teachings in the Sakya tradition, which is called Langdre. And so in 1955, some people came from Southeast Tibet Pampas, and they wanted Sakya Trinzen to give them Langdre, to present Langdre to them. But he was undergoing another retreat, and so the aunt goes, well, a few of your former, Jetsunmas, they also taught Langdre. Why don't you teach Langdre to the monks? And so she taught Langdre. And so she was only the 4th Jetsuma that I could find out that taught Langdre, and she was the youngest one. And then in 1956, she received these other teachings from a very famous Lama, Jomyen Khyentse Chökyi Lodro. So here, right, she looks more like a monk than a nun. This is typical Jetsun Kusho, and so this is when she's 19 years old in Sakya. And then in 1956, India was celebrating the 2,500th anniversary of Buddhist parinirvana. So the Dalai Lama and the Panchen Lama were invited as official guests, but the Khon family thought, well, we should go too, this is such an important occasion. And so they did, they went to India for the very first time, And Jetsunmas goes, the first time she drove on a train, she rode a train, she was like, she didn't even know what she was on, and the scenery is just passing by. She didn't know what happened, but she liked the train. And they went to they didn't go to all of these, but they went to some of the major spots. Of course, Bodhgaya, where the Buddha became enlightened, and Lumbini, which is actually in Nepal, where the Buddha was born, and then the place where he first turned the wheel in Deer Park or Sarnath, and then finally, and they also went to Vulture's Peak, where the Heart Sutra was expounded. So these were some of the places that they went to India. They also went to Calcutta. Calcutta was like, they couldn't believe it. They saw so many things that they had never seen in their entire life in Calcutta. And Sakya Jetsunmas told me, the Queen Mother of Sikkim came down to visit them, and she took her to a movie. And this movie had little singing and dancing and kissing, and their tutor was like scandalized that they were brought to such a place. And Jetsunmas told her tutor, why don't I learn English? And he goes, why do you need to learn English? You're a nun. It's no use to learn English at all, So of course she didn't learn English at the time, but already she was thinking about this. So now, 1959 occurs. All the Tibetans have become refugees. Many of them come to India, and it's very, very difficult for the Tibetans. And so this is in Sarnath or Deer Park. This is where the Buddha gave the first teaching. And so here you see the family, right? I don't know. Yeah, am I attached? Oh yeah, hold on. This is the young Sakya Jetsunmas. This is Jetsunmas. You can see how kind of shy she is. This is the aunt, Dhamma Trinity Paltar, and then all their attendants. And so they decided, as a spiritual family, the thing that they could do the best to help the Tibetans was to have prayers for them, prayers for the people who have passed away, prayers for the people who are enduring so much suffering. And so that's what the Sakya family did. But nobody had much money, and so here they are all coping as refugees. So all the Tibetans are dealing with enormous difficulties, losing their homeland, depression, deaths, despair. And in fact, one time, the Kampas asked, Sakya Jetsunmas to pray for all the people who were dying. And so he was reading the names of all the people who died, and he just broke down. He just cried, and the aunt goes, "You can't do that. Stop crying," But it was, it was a tragedy. It's a tragedy what happened. And for Jetsunmas, it was much more difficult to retain her status as a Jetsunma than for Sakya Jetsunmas. And one of the main reasons is that you can see how Jetsunmas looked. She had shaved head. She wore long robes. Like, if you have a shaved head in India at the time, the only people who shaved their heads were widows. And widows were highly, highly inauspicious. They should not be seen. And so people don't know who she is. They think maybe she's a widow. And so she's having a very difficult time doing this. Whereas Sakya Jetsunmas, even with long hair, there was always a lot of sadhus and yogis in India. So this was not a big deal the way Sakya Jetsunmas looked. But the way Jetsunmas looked was very, very difficult. And she had a very, very tough time doing this. And so then Tibetans would recognize her and they would want to prostrate to her. But if she wasn't dressed, properly, she was very, very uncomfortable that she was doing this. So she became a bit of a tomboy. And I don't have any photos of in her tomboy days, but she was, kind of dressed up, and then she would go to Hindi movies. She said she learned Hindi by going to the movies. She would go to American Westerns. She was a bit rebelling and a bit lost. But she said that she always did her practices and, and she never stopped learning. And so then the aunt decided, well, you better get a profession. Maybe we have to help the Tibetan government in some ways. And so they sent her to learn how to be a nurse. But actually it was just a glorified daycare center. And the sanitation was not too good at the time, and she got quite sick, and then she was sent home, within 9 months. And she said she never learned to do anything except change a few diapers, And so then the aunt goes, maybe it's time she should get married. So they found a suitable partner, Kusho, and then in 1964 she married, and she had 4 sons and a daughter, and the third child is Ludin Kenrubite, who lives in Nor. This is just a few photos of them in their early 60s. And this is Jetsunmas and mentioned Ludin, Kusho. I don't know if this is in Canada or the United States, but anyway, they marry in 1964. You can see she has her first child, 1965. Then the next year she has a daughter, but she dies quite young. Then 67, 69, 70. And she just gave birth herself. She didn't have, nobody basically helped her. She just gave birth herself. And so Jetsunmas was extremely tough. And then there was this friend, Germaine Gruhl. She was a famous photographer, and she had a friend of the Chinese Canadian ambassador. And so she arranged visas for Jetsunmas and her family to come to Canada. And Jetsunmas wasn't that interested in coming to Canada. She thought, oh, things were going fine in India. But Germaine Gruhl said, no, you're a little poor, you could do better in Canada, but I can get these visas for you. So she arranged it, and then in September 1971, the family immigrates to Canada. So they moved to Canada, and she said first they were brought to Trevor, Alberta, which I really have no idea where it is, maybe some of you know. And then in the spring, they moved to a cattle farm in Raymond, Alberta, and so Kusho kind of worked on the cattle farm. But she has now 3 sons to take care of, and she goes, between taking care of them and their homework and everything, she goes, it was exhausting. And eventually they moved to Vancouver in 1973. They both worked on a mushroom farm, and that's another one that was so physically demanding, carry these 20-pound boxes of mushrooms and everything. So it was a very hard life for them when they first arrived. Nobody really knew who they were, and so they were treated just like any other immigrant. And then eventually she becomes a weaver for this fashion designer, Zona Nellis. And she said no matter what job she did, she would always say prayers while she was doing the jobs, say mantras, sometimes sing songs and everything. So most people weren't aware that she was a Jetsunma, that she was a yogini at all. And so now, Sakya Jetsunmas, he visits the United States for the second time in 1979. And some of the women students are going, well, what about these women teachers? Aren't there any women teachers? And Deshwarmite, another eminent Sakya Lama, who started also Dharma centers in the 70s, was asked the same question. And so, the Lama in hiding. Sakya Jetsunmas goes, there is a female Lama. She's my sister. So everybody was just like, what? We don't know anything about her. She was the Lama in hiding. And so Sakya Jetsunmas goes, I think it would be a very good idea if you started teaching. There's a lot of women students. They're very interested in having a female Lama, and so please start teaching. But he wasn't, Tibetans are not so pushy. He just kind of said this matter of fact, but she picked up what he wanted. And so she became a Lama, and she gave empowerments and teachings throughout the world. She taught in Australia, Brazil, Great Britain, Germany, Hungary, Malaysia, Singapore. She established centers. She had a very beautiful retreat center in San Juan Island in Washington, but now I think it's up for sale. And so Jetsunmas is highly regarded as a knowledgeable, competent, accessible, and pragmatic person. So long life to Her Eminence.
Is she going to walk into this room before you finish?
She's 85, so I don't know. And as I mentioned, if any of you would like to buy these books, I want to give the donations to the Sakya College of Nuns. And so, long life, good health, and happiness to all of you. Shashay.
Where is the Sakya College of Nuns?
It's in Mandawala. Do you know Mandawala? Do you know Rajpur?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not too far from Rajpur or Dehradun. Dehradun is the biggest town nearby. And it's a little bit further. Actually, I did a retreat in there before it became the Sakya College for Nuns. It's a very nice place. It's a little isolated, which is good, so you can concentrate on your studies. And it's not too far from Noor, which is also in Mandawala.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
How did they, when they left Tibet, how did they do that?
What's this?
When the family left Tibet,
Yes.
how did they do that? Did they walk?
Yeah. You know, Sakya is not so far from the Sikkimese border. So it took them about 3 days. They had people that knew the way very well. And they crossed over the pass in Sikkim. And since the family has relations to the king of Sikkim, he welcomed them and he helped them. And originally they were thinking maybe to settle in Sikkim. And so they were looking for a school for Sakya Trinzen. And so they were, offered this one school, and then the administrators of the school said, well, he has to take off his earrings, he has to cut his hair, and the aunt said, nope, that's not a school we're gonna go for Sakya Trinzen. And so eventually they moved to Missouri, and then from Missouri they moved to Rajpur. Yeah. It's more explained in the book, but that's the gist of it. Yes, any questions? Yes?
Just wonder, where did the Jetsunma learn all the teaching?
What's this?
I just wonder, where did the Jetsunma learn all the teaching? Was it in the Tibet or in?
Where the Jetsunmas are teaching?
Where did she learn the teaching?
Oh, so like a lama, it's like you have to have certain practices, you have to undergo certain retreats, and then you're seen as qualified to teach. So it's a different way of teaching that, they don't go to a college to study. It's a way that they're taught. And so she was qualified to do that, and so she taught. Is that answering your question?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Yes.
So is this like is this a lineage of bhikkhunis, or is it separate from bhikkhunis?
Okay, that's a very good point. In Tibet, that whole big problem is bhikkhunis, right? Yeah, it's a very big problem. No, she only received Shramanaya vows, but in Tibetan Buddhism, there's a lot of tantric vows that you have to maintain. So, and bodhisattva vows. So she says that she maintains all those vows. But it's aside from kind of the ordination of the bhikkhuni.
So is it the same, because in Thai
Yes.
tradition, they have the...
Dasha,
yeah,
that's right. It's
not-
kind of similar.
Is it similar?
Yeah, it's kind of similar,
Yeah.
but Jetsunmas is much more highly regarded than most of the women in Thai for the,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Because I know there was like, there was a conference like not so long ago about like trying to push for the revival of the bhikkhuni.
Yes, I
The
know.
revival of the bhikkhuni.
Yeah, this is an
it's
ongoing issue, you're right.
Yeah.
And so some places they're recognizing this, from the Dharmagupta lineage and the Mula Sarvasti lineage, but not everybody's on board, yeah.
Some Theravadas, some Mahayanas, but yeah, it's...
Yes, that's
quite-
exactly right, you're right, yes, absolutely. Yes,
Thank you very much for this. You've done a hell of a lot of work.
Okay.
to get this far. But I'm just wondering, I mean, presumably in that village and along the way, there's no sort of registrar of births, deaths, and marriages where you can go to the office, pay the fee, and get all the information.
Yes.
So this must all depend on sort of word of mouth. You
Yes, it
sitting
is.
down, having tea with them and
Yes,
chatting
yes,
and
exactly.
finding out.
Mhm.
So you've done this whole huge portrait just based on getting to know this family and
Yes.
sticking with them.
Yes, and being allowed to do it. The Sakya family is a little bit closed, so they only trust certain people. So I'm a disciple of both Sakya Transit and
Well, now the
Jetsunmas.
family has seen your book. What do they think about that and this whole situation?
They're fine. They're fine. I live in
They said
Seoul.
thank you though.
Oh, yes. And in fact, you're talking about the Punso Kodron in Seattle?
Everybody.
Yeah, I gave them like 40 books that they could distribute, and they were very, very happy, and they even wanted another 20. So they were happy with it.
Next time I want another book, you better be careful.
Yeah, so no, they're fine with it, yes,
You mentioned at some point the Sakya family split.
yes.
So what was the context and was it a kind of ecclesiastical?
No, it was,
Issues or-
they wanted to live separately. One brother and one wife wanted to live separately. Wasn't anything to do ecclesiastic at all. It was just familiar disputes, I'd say, yeah. Mhm.
My understanding, maybe it's incorrect, that the head of the lineage flips back and forth over
Okay,
time.
so this is another big problem in the Sakya tradition, is that there's two ways to choose a Sakya transit. One, but now things have changed, but previously, the two ways to choose a Sakya transit was, yes, either you go between the two families, or you just go, who is the oldest, regardless of the family. So this was a bit of a controversy with the Punsuk Palace, because at the time when this young man, Sakya Trinsen, he was very, very young. He was only, how old was he when he was 14? The Punsuk Palace had a son that was in his 20s. So they expected him to become Sakya Trinsen.
Right.
But the Domo Palace said, no, we're following the alternate, that it should be that. And then in the end, it was the Dalai Lama who selected this present Sakya Trinsen. So now, Dr. Rinpoche, who was the head of the Punsuk Palace in Seattle, and Sakya Trinsen met. And Dr. Rinpoche has quite a good grandsons who are being very, very well trained. And Sakya Trinsen has his two sons that are very well trained. So they decided, Sakya Trinsen and Dr. Rinpoche, that now all these sons would have the opportunities to become Sakya Trinsen for 3 years. This is a new tradition. So the first person was the eldest son of Sakya Trinsen, then it was the second son of Sakya Trinsen, and he's the present. He's the 43rd Sakya Trinsen
So
right now.
in 3 years, it goes to another son,
Yes,
and so it'll circle around?
yes. So then now it will probably be the oldest grandson in the Punsuk Palace after these 3 years. And so they decided to do this was that Sakya Trinsen says, as long as I'm alive, I can train them properly. I can make sure that we have a very good foundation, and so that when I'm gone and Dr. Rinpoche has already died, that now, the Sakyas will have such a good foundation with 5, 6 of these Sakya Trinsens, and so they're well trained, and so the future of Sakya
It
is
seems like a
assured.
good solution.
Yeah, I personally think 3 years is not that long. You almost get started, but
Yeah.
that's only my personal opinion. Yes, yes,
Like Jetsma,
yes,
actually,
yes,
her son is in India.
yes.
At this
Sudhi
point.
Ken Rinpoche, that's right. He's the head of Noor.
Near Rajpur.
Yes, yeah, in in Mandawala, actually, yeah, yes, yes, yeah.
Did they get the chance to be the Sakya Jetsunmas?
No, because, it's not the lineage, yes, yeah.
Can you explain or perhaps you explain to the lineage beginning why the Dalai Lama had the ability to declare which one would be the next, would be the proper Sakya tradition?
Because the Dalai Lama is considered the highest leader in Tibet.
Just because of the politics, or is it also connected to the lineage?
It's more, in this case, it's more political than spiritual. Yeah, yes.
Could you talk a little bit more about the laundry system?
Oh, that's a very complicated system. I can't really talk about that today, yeah. But you can find a lot of information online, yeah, yes.
Yes, a question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Uh-huh.
So, from your photos, it sounds like there's two Jetsunmas alive today. There's the one in Richmond, and there's the young girl.
Oh, but there's more Jetsunmas now, younger ones.
Oh, okay.
So this young girl is already 16, she's the oldest. Then she has a sister, and then there's two more Jetsunmas on the other son's side. And so,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, so they're
Yeah.
getting trained. And I'm glad you brought this up because this young girl that's 16 years old, she's really phenomenal. And her mother is very good with technology, so she records everything that her daughter does. And she's a nun. And what it is that usually the rite of passage for all the sons is this very particular Lama dance of this deity, Vajrakilaya. But never a female was allowed to do this, never. She's the first person who now trained in this Vajrakilaya Lama dance and has done it and had great success. So she's breaking the laws.
boundaries.
Yes, the boundaries, yes. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, are there any other female lamas nowadays?
Yeah, there's different female lamas. Yeah, there's more like that when I showed you the Mindraling Jetsunmas, she's very, very famous, and she's another one. And there's many more right now, but yes, yeah. Oh, excuse me, hi.
Yeah, thanks. That was really interesting. I just had a question about kind of gender roles, because it was really interesting how you showed the picture of her as a young woman,
Yes.
as a nun,
Yes.
who actually liked to, look like a monk.
Yeah.
But then, she got married and came here, and that later picture, she looks like quite a traditional
Yes.
woman. And I'm just wondering, in your interviews with her, like if she reflected on that at all, like how did she feel about shifting from her role as a nun to being a married householder, basically?
Yeah, in the beginning
being
she had no choice,
Yeah.
she didn't want to get married, but the aunts insisted.
Huh.
And so then she accepted it, and then she got pregnant so quickly, within a year she's already bearing her first child. And so then she just accepted it. But, she's a very, very strong woman, Jetsunmas. And also she doesn't mince words, you ask her something, she'll tell you something in a very straightforward way, and so.
And why did she become like the hidden Lama, as you put it here? I mean, because she had been recognized as a prominent figure early in her life before she left Asia, right? And so was it that she was kind of in married life, and it was hard for her to also.
Well, she didn't really want to teach. She said that she would have preferred to be in a lifelong retreat if she had that chance, but she never did.
So she didn't.
She had to support her, her children. She had to make a living, and so.
She worked hard.
Very, very hard.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if I think I might be able to say this,
Yes.
I don't know them, but her husband is like her disciple. Like, he does everything for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the other thing, I said, well, because she definitely has the more prominent role in the marriage. And so I asked, what about, say, Kusha, the husband? And she said that, he's completely supportive. He's not jealous at all. And she goes, if he had any jealousy, we wouldn't last. So he kind of knows, that he wants to help her. And they're great partners. They really are. And And she goes, they don't get angry, and they just work things out in their ways. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
It's really
yeah.
wonderful. The book is here. Professor Benard just talked about one prominent figure, contemporary figure, but the book actually traces all the lineage of Jetsunmas in Sakya tradition and the other great female figures from that tradition. So it's really, it's how long did it take you to work?
A long time.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And here is sort of, this actually you have to, these are not written down, all of these.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go and do the oral history, you have to do sort of archaeology, you have to dig up interview. You can travel all over India, Tibet, and get these stories.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. So
With
that's
the help
all
of
in
my
the book.
husband, he
Yeah.
passed away now 2 years ago, but my husband was invaluable to this project. His name was Nima George. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if you don't have a cash, you can do say e-transfer to me, then I'll pass it on to Professor Benard.